Okay, folks, it's showtime, and I'm live talking about the upcoming eclipse in a couple days in Gemini. I did one eclipse update earlier a couple weeks ago, and now I'm doing another one just to bring this into the forefront. We do have a quite a transformative period ahead of us, obviously. And just want to bring your attention also to one thing. You see it scrolling there on the bottom. For those of you who don't know, you could get a free web class on the nodes as well that I did. I actually did it last year, talking about when Rahu goes into Gemini and that entire transit through the nakshatras, through the different lessons that we're going to be learning. And as I said, when it happened last year, the shift of Rahu into Rahu into Gemini and Ketu into Sagittarius, is we were going to be turning away from our beliefs about many things. Maybe not our spiritual religious beliefs, but that too, it's going to be a time to really shake up our belief system, because Ketu going through Sagittarius and Rahu going through Gemini is going to kind of scramble the chessboard. So by the end of it, we don't really know what's going on. We don't know what we think anymore, what we believe anymore. All of our beliefs are just kind of scrambled. Even think about like our beliefs about the world, or a simple one is even things like politics or society or culture, or what do we believe about this thing? It's gotten so scrambled up now. We're living in this time of just, again, so much like news, propaganda, believe this, believe that. Even the things we thought we didn't believe, now all of a sudden that seems more sensible than we'd have ever imagined. All kinds of things like this. So this is Rahu in Gemini. Rahu going through Gemini has really sort of, as I said, scrambled the chessboard a little bit. And let me bring this up here. So we have the chart here, and we see here in the chart that this eclipse is going to happen on June 20th. This is Pacific time at about 11 o'clock p.m. Pacific time this is Saturday, June the 20th. You see it's happening right when the sun and moon come together in Mrigashira Nakshatra. Now, this is a solar eclipse. And, this, let me see here. Sorry. This solar eclipse that is happening is going to be very prominent for showing a more of an explosiveness and an explosion around all of these themes and these sort of confusing themes that we're already not so aware of, or that are getting blown up in our face and we're having to look at. The path of the eclipse seems to be going through like the Indian, like in like North India, and even through like China, and it starts with the shadow going through like the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, but then it hits North India and then goes through China. So those areas could be greatly affected. And as far as their politics, excuse me, 1 second. So one of the things we have to really know about is that what eclipses do, again, especially the solar eclipse, they really explode our kind of subconscious mind around the themes that are indicated. And here with Gemini, again, it's been happening for the last couple years, where all of the, this age of spin and propaganda and everything being polarized around ideas has gotten so pushed to the brink. But it's in the midst of real social issues that we're seeing, of course, overtaking the world right now are ideas like, Black Lives Matter and these social causes, especially as it relates to race relations. We saw a couple weeks ago, started at the end of May, right around the last lunar eclipse, when we had very close to the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, we started seeing all these protests. Literally, this whole idea of watching someone being choked out in front of us really started to explode that idea. This was on the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And it's taken over the world. There's been a wave of protests around the world. Now, of course, this is happening in the midst of a pandemic, of a social pandemic of this COVID that's also been overtaking our, and really hijacking our mind and imagination and sort of potential for being paranoid. Everybody has ideas about what is really going on. We don't really understand what it could be doing. So our triggering around, again, things like conspiracy theories, what does it really mean? What's really happening? Literally, is there a conspiracy? Was it made in a lab and released on us for some dystopian future? And, those things have kind of taken a back seat now now there's the Black Lives Matter, and now we're getting more political about that. And, social causes that have been festering for a long time, whether people know it or not, or they're just kind of burnt out on the issue. Again, we can see this isn't just some American issue. This has actually gone global around the world, speaking out about civil rights, equal rights for Black people. Of course, in the U.S., whether people want to acknowledge it or not, the history of slavery. We fought a civil war over it. They lost, and then after that there was Reconstruction, and then Jim Crow, and then Civil Rights Act, and there's still so much systemic racism, and it comes down now to the police forces and the violence in our law enforcement. And we're seeing suddenly all this sweeping changes being made. Sorry, it just got really dark here. Hang on a second. Sorry, it was really bright before we started. Then all of a sudden went dark. Okay, so these are really important shifts and changes right now. Like people even in the, having to make the choice between perhaps, protesting in a protest for a movement that they agree with, but not wanting to spread disease. So we go out and protest, try to socially distance with a mask on, and, again, so many ideas getting scrambled where we're not really sure, how the next world is going to come in. In the midst of that, we have, especially one of the things I've looked at here in the U.S. and with our government, it can always be used as an excuse or as a false flag or just as propaganda to double and triple down on political, to score political points with saying, okay, law and order, and, the president in his base responds to that kind of thing, not acknowledging perhaps the racial component as much as people would like, of course. So just more polarizing, major upheavals, as I say right now. So this is the backdrop. This is the social backdrop of something like this. This is what we would see. We see it here. Gemini is an air sign. And again, the reason I'm stressing things like the ideas is because notice how these external situations get us, especially now in an era of mass communication, social media, like, what does it all mean? How can we interpret all of this? We need legislation. We need reform. These ideas that can change the world. Again, this is also very clearly seen by Ketu going through Sagittarius, saying these old ways of doing things, these old laws, these old systems, they're not working anymore. And by the way, one of the biggest changes, the biggest change that we've seen, especially as it relates to the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the wave of protests that have happened, the reason they've continued is because they have now shifted white America or white people in the world. Again, it's not just America. I don't want to keep making it out like it's just America. It's been all over the world. But you see white culture, white America now getting it across the board, across the demographic. I mean, it's something like, I think I saw a poll, and it was a Rasmussen poll, which is very conservative. Rasmussen polls are usually very skewed toward the conservative. I think it was something like 75%, even in a Rasmussen poll, agreed with the Black Lives Matter movement and law enforcement. Look at how quickly even something that started like defund the police, which is a radical thing to even think. Usually the opposite party, like the right wing or someone who would be against that, would just take that radical position, like abolish ICE, and use the radical nature of that suggestion to just discredit the whole movement. It's usually used to discredit the entire movement. Oh, the radical left wants to defund the police. I'm for law and order to keep you safe. That was the attempt. It was attempted. Look at what happened. Already, it's only been, I mean, they've only been protesting a few weeks. San Francisco has changed the funding of the police department. Several other cities have changed. They've already started to change. Even President Trump came out with a very sort of toothless law enforcement adjustment, which is not going to go far enough. But even those attempts to marginalize all this, it's not going to work. There has been a huge shift. People who think it's just a lot of BS, and there are some people that are actually doing that as well. They think it's just more propaganda. Why can't we, look, this has been going on too long in the world, especially in the US. And whether people like it or not, this is absolutely a reality when you look at any demographics of black incarceration, over policing, where the police just are there to respond to every kind of call. They patrol these high crime neighborhoods, read black neighborhoods. They just drive around in the cars all day, frankly, just looking for trouble. This is a legacy of that, which needs to change. And it's remarkable how right away everybody got it. It hasn't even taken that long. Change happens fast. People think, oh, it's going to take so long. I remember when this whole defund the police thing even started a few weeks ago. And I said that I was encouraged just to see that it's even being talked about. Not that I think we should totally defund police. No one really thinks that. But I was just shocked at how quickly it was being talked about. Everybody from the right and the left were going, oh, you can't do that. It's going to take generations. And I remember I made a comment on my Facebook that just said, oh, that's BS, man. Change happens quick. It could happen quick. If people keep protesting and people keep doing this stuff, you could see change really quickly. Now, again, it's only a beginning. It's only the beginning. Okay, it's only a beginning. So again, but it's important how quickly it happened. A month ago, the last new moon, again, these eclipses happen on new moons. A month ago, we weren't talking about any of this. Nothing. A month ago, nothing. We start getting in the eclipse cycle and bam, all of a sudden, change the laws, police reform, defund the police. Doesn't sound so crazy at all. And of course, it doesn't mean you defund them. But what you do is you defang the law enforcement. So instead of it all being about enforcing the law, it's about public safety, public health, public wellness. Why do we have armed militia responding to every domestic situation? Why didn't we think of this before? Hello? Well, look at how normal it is now already. Okay, so here already, huge shift. A huge shift. Just in consciousness, just in awareness. And it's pulling everything along. It's pulling everything along in that regard. And it's bipartisan. If you've been looking at the news and even looking at the politics a little bit, you'll see that even shortly thereafter, there was a hearing, I don't know, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, where one of the most conservative, this is in the U.S., in our politics, one of the most conservative Republicans, I mean, he's like a brown shirt Republican. I mean, he's like dyed in the wool, really, really right-wing guy named Matt Gaetz from Florida. Matt Gaetz from Florida was like, we're here to work with Democrats to get this done. We know this is real. And it looked really sincere. Like, he's like, yeah, black people have been mistreated way too long. We need to do this. Because people realize the fabric of the country could just come apart at this point. It needs to happen. So anyway, this is an important backdrop as far as being shown with this eclipse. Absolutely. This is the kind of transformation that happens around eclipses. And again, one of the main things I said with Rahu going through Gemini, it's going to show us the truth. This is a truth. This is a moment of truth, a truthful moment. I'm saying where we can come together around something that is not really very debatable, and it's going to be to the benefit of all of us. Again, there are people who are going to debate this, who think whatever, and I'm just, this is progress. It's social progress. And so we're seeing that sort of the convulsions around that happening. It's not divorced from the fact that we have all these retrograde planets. What do retrograde planets do? They reverse things. Reverse. The whole time we've been talking about Saturn retrograde in Capricorn, Jupiter retrograde in Capricorn. And again, Jupiter is the law. Jupiter is the law. He's been in Capricorn, and now he's going back into Sagittarius. When Jupiter goes back into Sagittarius by early July, in a couple weeks, we should start to see some real meaningful, maybe some real, a major legislative policy start to take hold even more. Because we're going to have another lunar eclipse in a couple weeks. And by that time, Jupiter will be in Sagittarius as well. But we also have Venus retrograde. Again, I said the whole time, and by the way, no, I didn't predict we were going to have a race relations thing. I said when Mars went through Aquarius, we were going to see some social unrest. And now Mars has moved into Pisces. People were saying it was going to happen around COVID and stuff. People were going to get tired of wearing their masks and all this. I didn't think it was going to be that. And I didn't know what was going to happen. But I definitely thought the frustration of being in and Mars going through Aquarius, some things might boil over. We're definitely seeing it. But this Venus retrograde in Taurus, again, is also just the indicator of wanting to care for each other. Wanting to care for each other. I've been saying this for months, that this transit of Venus through Taurus from the end of April until early August was going to really early April to early August. Yeah. Is really going to shift a lot of things in the positive. I had hoped, I'm going to talk about COVID in a minute, but I'll just say this. I had hoped that it would mean that our response, and I say our meaning the government, would have been better. I actually thought that by now, even the incompetent boobs we have now would have by now done something to take care of us in the sense of have testing and have put something in place nationally. I cannot believe the level of incompetence, not just that has happened from the leaders, but that the people have accepted. We don't even talk about it anymore. All I see now are people fighting with each other over our confusion, and people need to stop doing this. Is anytime you say something about COVID now, like let's say on social media, or you hear people talk about it, because we don't have any good direction and we don't have good data, again, this is the Rahu in Gemini, we don't really know what's going on, and particularly because we don't have a good plan to follow, like we don't have good testing. And I say we, meaning in the US, and most parts of the world have handled it. Every country in the world has handled it better than here. But we don't have any testing, no tracing, nothing. It's just fend for yourself. It's just a complete political football for the administration. They just want to make it seem like it's no big deal so that it's not going to hurt election or the economy. Anyway, we've gotten so acclimated to the absolute complete incompetence. I'm going to say it right now, whether people like it or not, but no one could even conceive that Obama would have bungled this way, or even if Hillary Clinton were president. It is just unfathomable to think that this level of complete ridiculous and utter incompetence, this has always been Trump's biggest danger, and I've said it from day one. Forget all this bombast and all this talk. Now, of course, that's not good. But the biggest problem is his utter incompetence. Incompetence meaning he does not care how well he handles something or whatever. It's all about, is it going to help me get elected? How do I look? Feuds with anybody who disagrees. It's just a thin-skinned person who has no clue or no concern about anything much beyond that. He'll start to care if he thinks it's going to affect his numbers or whatever. The level of incompetence is unbelievable, and now surrounded in a bubble of yes men. And we've just gotten used to it. We're just like, again, the frog in the boiling water. We're not even looking around and going, why have we accepted this? Why aren't people taking to the streets to protest that? All right, I had thought when I saw that this was finally going to come to the U.S., at first, actually, I took it lightly, I will say. I was just like, well, it's going to be like a seasonal thing and it'll stay there. Once I saw that, okay, this is actually real, then it was very clear. We had Saturn and Mars going through Capricorn for a few months. And I said that I had hoped and thought that by the end of May, at least by the end of May, at least middle end of May, we would have a structure in place where we'd be able to handle this at least with good testing, where we would then be able to get through this and it wouldn't be as bad. I was wrong. I was just flat out wrong. Didn't happen. Part of that was based on the fact that there's some level of competence somewhere. And I actually thought, like with the exalted sun, that was going to bring some assistance from the government and the powers that be that would bring this out. Didn't happen. But what did happen is that we got relief and the numbers came down and things weren't as bad as we had thought. Which basically means that the people, we did our job. We weathered it. We did our social distancing and we flattened the curve. We brought the numbers down. And at that point, there could have been and should have been and should be now some way for us to have tests and to know who has it and to know how to navigate this. We've been thrown to the wind, none of it. So now we're just stuck in that sense. Again, this is also this Rahu in Gemini. It's like, what we're doing now, though, is just we're trying to look at these organizations and everybody is second guessing. Now everybody has become an expert researcher. Every person online now I do my own research. Like if you quote something from the WHO or the National Institute of Health or CDC and you try to gauge that with other things that have happened that seem to make sense, it's just endless debates now. People just get into their biased silos. And everybody's a researcher now. Everybody's like, expert, and again, there's so much battling about this kind of stuff now. And again, we shouldn't be doing that. I mean, we're doing this primarily as a response to the incompetence, and we've just gotten used to it. And of course, there's still the conspiracies floating around. Everybody has become an expert on RNA viruses and all that stuff. And just kind of, again, part of the virus is the fear virus. With most of the data that we've seen so far, it's showing that it's much less lethal than we had thought. The spread is harder. The asymptomatic spread, which means the people that never show symptoms, very rarely shed virus. And there are studies from Germany and from Taiwan that shows this. It's also just reasonable. And even there was a big uproar a couple weeks ago because the WHO director came out and just basically said, yeah, it's very rare that an asymptomatic, which means someone who never develops symptoms, it's very rare that they shed virus. And the world went, and the left wing, everybody went crazy because that fact was then used by the right wing to say, oh, see, we don't have to wear masks. And because the political ramifications of that fact was so upsetting to people for politics, not science, but politics, she had to come out and, quote, walk it back, which she really didn't walk it back. She just came out and made a statement so that it would calm down the insanity reaction because people use the facts for propaganda. You can't even say the facts. It even happens at that level now. So anyway, these are the kinds of things I'm saying about like just the crazy. It's so hard to like see through a lot of even the messages that we're getting about coronavirus, the the other social I should say the social issues that we're dealing with now. So underneath it all, besides all of that, okay, that's the world that we're living in. But besides all of that, the spiritual implications and the deeper possibilities here, aside from this like thing that we're all kind of dealing with, there's so much stress and anxiety around these things, and I don't want to be stressing you out talking about it. I'm just trying to bring out and showing like this is kind of what it looks like in this sort of eclipse spin media propaganda demagoguery ideas cycle. We're just like, I mean, let's face it, it's very unusual to have like all of these urgent changes happening all at once, sort of colliding and literally kind of showing us this idea that where we're like, not that this ain't it. This ain't the real thing. In some ways, it can be very validating that we can only do what we can do. We can only do what we can do. This is the world. And the world's always been some version of this. Nothing new. And underneath it all, there's enormous, not only is there great change that's happening, I think, in the social realm, especially with policing and higher consciousness and awareness for, Black citizens and whatnot. But in a more spiritual sense, these qualities of Gemini, and especially with the Nakshatra Mrigashira, is very much about that search for that which is beyond, that curiosity, that curious search for that which is beyond this earth. Again, the thing about Gemini is it's right on the plane of the galaxy, especially the Nakshatra of Ardra. This is happening right within a couple degrees of Ardra. In fact, it's literally at 6:11, like if I run this forward, see, because an hour later it's passed. But you can see, if you see the moon here, a couple hours later, see, 2 hours later, the moon is actually in Ardra. So this is right on the plane of the galaxy. So this eclipse is happening right on the plane of the galaxy, right on the galactic plane. That's the most like transformative section of the sky for sure. Ardra is literally the abode of Shiva as Rudra, the fierce god, the god of destruction, the god who blows things up and destroys the old paradigm. So this eclipse is happening right at that point, pretty much. And it really shows how, again, we are in some of the most transformative times that we're going to experience for a while. This is like so many things coming to a head, where again, we're really seeing, or we're being gifted to see beyond the veil of what we even thought before, what we even thought was real, as far as the world is concerned, but also, and more importantly, your inner world. This is one of the best times you'll have in a long time for authentic spiritual practice, stillness, solitude. Especially with this powerful Saturn in Capricorn, with Jupiter. And when I say this time, I mean these times we're in right now. Those who have been able to get away from all of this, all this stress and this like restlessness, there's so much depth and power now. And again, the nakshatra of Mrigashira and this Mrigashira Ardra juncture here is really where Shiva and Shakti are dancing in the crown chakra. It's literally the crown chakra. And the opposite point is the Muladhara chakra, is like the root chakra. This part of the zodiac is the root chakra. Down here, Mula, the root, Mula means root. And this part is opposite. This is the crown chakra, where Shiva and Parvati exist, where the masculine and the feminine, the divine masculine and the divine feminine commingle, cohabitate. And Mrigashira is the Soma, and Ardra is the Shiva. Shiva and Soma, water and fire, mixing up here, especially as we're having this eclipse. It's this dance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine in the mind up here. It's this beautiful harmonizing of masculine and feminine and uniting that intensity and courage and fighting spirit of the masculine, which ultimately is fighting for liberation, with that feeling embodiment and that sensitivity and that longing to merge with something higher, which is the feminine. The two come together because the masculine without the feminine is just trying to fight worldly battles and trying to win conquer some external territory, because masculine is external. Feminine is internal and longing to merge. The feminine has the longing. I just did a relationship astrology course where it says very clearly in the text that when it talks about the moon, it said the moon is lustful, which really means this longing to merge through the heart. When it's not understood, it's a woman longing to merge with a man and then getting disappointed. She's really longing to merge with God, and all of us are longing to merge with our higher self. So we need the longing of the feminine with the courage and effort of the masculine, the love of the water and the intensity of the fire, the compassion of the Soma and of the divine feminine, with the vision, clarity, discipline of the masculine to complete the circle, to reach that goal, to reach the goal of enlightenment. That union of masculine and feminine is really so much about what this eclipse is about. This eclipse is about that. That's the deep divine potential, is this union of Shiva and Shakti in the mind. This external world that's just like scrambling our brain. It hurts our heart, it hurts our mind. We want to do something and then we try and it comes out wrong. We're trying to speak it and communicate it and it doesn't work. And what do we do? What do we do? We just go, whew, all right, well, I'm never going to be in control of that anyway. I can be involved. I can care. I do care. I'll speak my piece. I'll do my best. And then I'll leave that to God. That's God's work. My work is this. This is all I'm in control of. The only thing I'm in control of is the moment and the breath and the mind and consciousness. And you're completely in control of that. In fact, that's your only job. No one else is in control of that. You are. And so, so much of the power of this eclipse, again, the actual eclipse is happening in Mrigashira Nakshatra. But then again, shortly after shortly after the moon crosses and the eclipse ends, the moon goes into Ardra. The sun is, doesn't enter Ardra until a few hours later. But it couldn't be. It's right on the cusp. And by the way, this is also showing that right now the solstices are happening. The summer solstice happens at 0 Ardra Nakshatra right now, based on precession of the equinoxes. The summer solstice happens on 0 Ardra, which is a way that you can also anchor the zodiac. I'm not going to get into it, but this is why even these times we're in right now, for the last 50 years or so, This is actually the same kind of correlation that we have to the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar started to anchor, or what happened with the, like December 21st, 2012. No, again, December 21st is another solstice. It's the opposite solstice. The Mayan calendar reset on that date because what happens is, on that date, from our point of view, the sun crosses the galactic plane, moving north. Now, from where we are, the sun crosses the galactic plane moving south on the summer solstice. This is literally what happens on the solstices now. The sun is passing right in front of the plane of the galaxy. It's crossing through the plane of the galaxy on this day while this eclipse is happening. So that's literally what's happening as well. So this isn't just, I mean, this spot is always very important. 0 Ardra at the end of Mrigashira is always very important. Just anytime a planet crosses the end of Mrigashira and hits Ardra, it's crossing the plane of the galaxy from where we're watching it. So to have an eclipse on that point shows these unprecedented, wild times that we're in. And it's there's a huge reset happening, personally, culturally, and the more energy that's being pushed out like this, the harder it is to stay grounded. And again, the more, and you know, the easier it is for us to lose ourselves in the external. So again, I will tell you that mantras and practices, especially that unite the masculine and the feminine, that unite the divine masculine and the divine feminine, are really powerful. This could be to, you know, Durga and Shiva especially, because this is Ardra, where it's Shiva's abode, and the nakshatra before is Durga or Parvati or Kali. All spiritual practices are powerful, though, for sure. But definitely that masculine, feminine, and uniting those forces are important. A few other things I want to say, though, is that this section of the sky, especially when the moon moves from Mrigashira into Ardra, is also a very dangerous place in the zodiac. That's not Shiva's abode for nothing. Many difficult cultural events have happened, cultural like natural disasters. For example, 9/11, when the planes hit the buildings, happened when the moon was moving from Mrigashira into Ardra. Rahu was also there. This is one reason why people predicted like a 9/11 type of event around the time of the last solar eclipse that happened around on Christmas. We didn't have an explosive event, but what we had was COVID that came out a couple weeks later. It was like we all dealt with it. This is like a 9/11 type of event that shifts everything. We're on the other end of a new world now. This axis is very potent for transformation, frankly, particularly the Ardra end. So we have to be really careful of things like explosive events. And that means things like literally explosive events, things blowing up and some sort of boiling over of tensions, war, a watershed event that could happen, again, if not that day leading up to it or around that time or shortly thereafter. You know, you have to understand that astrologers do this a lot. You know, sometimes you have something that happens like right on eclipse day or something like that. These eclipses, they're not days. It's not a moment. I mean, it's a moment when the eclipse happens. And sometimes you see, and often, in fact, you see some really peculiar things can happen while the eclipse is happening or that day. But often it's not that exact day leading up to or just after. It's a cycle. And that's literally what it is. So, but in particular, though, I draw attention to this Mrigashira Ardra transit because this literally is also a time when the moon moves from Mrigashira to Ardra. For example, the planes hit the buildings when the moon was in Mrigashira. The buildings fell when it was in Ardra. We also had, for example, the tsunami that happened in 2004. We had the earthquake in the Indian Ocean when the moon was in Mrigashira. We had all the flooding when it went into Ardra. We had the Hurricane Katrina in the U.S. It was another big thing. There's been more. I just was really tracking it a lot at that time. But Katrina, we had all of that rain that was falling when the moon was going through Mrigashira. Then we had all the levees and the dams compromised. The levees in New Orleans compromised, and all the flooding happened when the moon went into Ardra. So this transition of the moon from Mrigashira to Ardra is notorious for natural disasters and things like that. So we're in flood season, hurricane season, all that stuff, particularly with the trajectory going through India and China. Again, I don't like to make predictions like that, but we could see like major terrible monsoon or something or around that, or some terrible flooding perhaps. I hope we don't see it, but this is definitely, again, earthquake, flooding for sure, because Ardra is literally the flood. It's literally a flood. And it can even be like a flood of debris like we saw on 9/11 when all the buildings fell and it was a flood of debris everywhere. But this is a cataclysmic transformational section of the sky. Don't think anything else. It is. So there could definitely be this is definitely a high alert for the potential of some singularity disaster. And let's pray that that doesn't happen like that. And by the way, I talked a while ago about we were in pretty, perhaps some dangerous earthquake time. There was a lot of seismic activity for the last month or so, but it didn't hit a lot of populated zones. And I think a lot of it is because of the Venus Taurus. If you want to look astrologically, when you get these planets in good dignity, like Venus in Taurus, Saturn in Capricorn, even though there was a lot of seismic activity, especially when Mars was over here and those lunation cycles, I talked about it a little bit, we didn't see a devastating event, which is great. Again, we're getting close to it again here, especially with Mrigashira Ardra, so watch out for that as well. But, these are really transformative times, socially transformational. I don't think it's going to be an end. I think there's going to be this, what we call social chaos. If you want to, the name of this video, I put more social chaos, ? Yeah, chaos in the sense of uncertainty. And it's around a couple issues here. I think we can expect to see, naturally, there's going to be a spike in the COVID cases. We're already seeing it, mainly because of protests and things like that. We're going to see something like that. We're already seeing it quite a bit. Maybe not necessarily because of protests, but just because people have been anxious to get out more. But I would not be surprised if we see some spikes in the areas where there were a lot of protests. But again, we also have to look at a few things that are not really doubtable anymore, especially about the COVID. One second, let me take a quick thing. We do have data now. There's just this idea, and particularly, and I see it more with people online that try to argue their position if they don't agree with the one you put out. It always comes back to this idea that we just have no idea what the virus does now. We just have no idea. We do have ideas now. We have plenty of ideas. We have a lot of data now. It's not perfect, but we have a lot of data. We have demographic data. We see that younger people are much less likely. Of course they get it. We see asymptomatic people. A lot of people did not have been in contact and never developed symptoms. The CDC estimates that's 25 to 30%. 25 to 30% of the people that come in contact with it never develop symptoms. And according to WHO, until she had to walk it back because of the left-wing outrage, those people that are asymptomatic rarely spread. It's, again, pre-symptomatic means you don't know you have it yet and you're out walking around. That's a different ballgame. But asymptomatic, which means people that never develop symptoms, rarely spread. people that are much younger rarely spread. It's mainly skewing toward older people and people with comorbidities. We know this now. It's pretty clear in the data. That doesn't mean we change anything we're doing. It doesn't mean that saying that means that, oh, you got to be careful saying that because it sounds like you might be advocating not wearing a mask and all. Not saying any of that. We keep wearing masks. We keep being careful. But we can still also acknowledge the data. It's there. We're seeing it now. Again, I'm just bringing this out because we have to be careful, because this is what I've noticed, especially at least with the kind of thought virus, paranoid virus, propaganda. This is part of propaganda, is you can't even speak a truth where you say what we see now without people going, well, you better be careful saying that, because if you say that, then people are going to take that to mean this. Man, can we speak the truth anymore? Can we just say it without it meaning? Especially when we do actually say, hey, guess what? Yeah, let's keep wearing the mask. Let's keep doing this. But we have data now. So maybe it's not going to be as bad. And if those who seem to be the most vulnerable really spend the most time, and we all do our part, this is what it looks like we're working through. And by God, let's hope at some point the leaders get testing. This is the only reason we have to keep doing all this crap now anyway. It's because we don't have any tests either. So let's keep all that in mind too before we start acting like we're all experts on virus transmission or whatever it is. But the numbers I'm talking about come from the organizations, and it's an aggregate of a lot of them. We're seeing those trends are very general, but specific in every example now. We see that. So, I think that as we move forward, going through where we're at now into the next phase, even of managing this, people still have to be really careful, because it can be transmitted, easily. We might not know we have it. This is why we keep wearing the mask and whatnot. But we have to also be able to realize that, hopefully we'll have other strategies in place where it won't be as bad as we think. Again, let's see. I have a feeling, again, that obviously there's going to be a spike because we've been getting out more. But because I think, again, this eclipse in Mrigashira is a gentle nakshatra. Again, Venus is still very powerful in Taurus. Saturn is in its own sign, and we have these good dignities here. Right now, even as I record this, there's this big fear, this resurgence that we never flatten the curve. It's going to come and whack us again really badly. Maybe. I mean, it definitely could be. I have a feeling it is probably not going to be as bad as we expect. And by the way, we should be seeing it pretty soon, if that is the case. We started these big protests almost 3 weeks ago. So if we were going to be seeing all of this wave from all the protests, we should start seeing quite a bit of it here real soon. If within the next week or 10 days or so, we don't see this gigantic spike, which, again, let's be honest. Let's also be honest about this other part of it. Before we started seeing all these protests, we were like, don't go out, don't go out. Oh my God, don't gather together, don't get in a big crowd. We just kind of, all right, where'd that go? Again, I'm not saying I think it's right. Again, it's not advocating for anything, but what I'm saying is, even like I started the video saying, we're questioning all of our beliefs. We were totally just like, this was our whole mantra, like for 3 months. We're like, don't get in crowds. And then all of a sudden, overnight, tens of thousands of people in crowds all over the world. And people weren't even really talking about the COVID part. For a couple weeks, we just started getting back to going, now, wait a minute. Now we're back to talking about that. And it's going to be this wave that's going to cream us again. Okay, maybe. But again, I have a feeling that it might not be as bad as we think because of the data that we have been seeing. It's mostly been younger people. Again, we're still going to see something, but all right. Anyway, I already talked about that. But so again, this what we would call social chaos or whatever. I think these waves of protest, and this is going to continue for a while, especially since we still keep seeing black men shot in the back and all this stuff. Again, there's going to be there's a shifting happening, a cultural shifting that's happening. We might even start to see people on the right wing come out and start getting frustrated with like what's happening in Seattle and all this. We're already seeing some frustration. We could definitely start seeing some frustrations around, things like the Confederate statues and all, there could be some real tensions boiling over this summer with this eclipse. This is an eclipse in Gemini. It's about ideas. There's kind of a war or a battle over ideas. What is our ideology? We've had a president and an administration that has been the whitest, the most right-wing sympathetic that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime, in the midst of a very liberal country. No matter what people might tell you, the U.S. is definitely a center-left country. Our politics and our laws aren't. This is what we're seeing also, not to get too political, but we are definitely around social issues, a very liberal country. Most of the country absolutely believes in race rights, human rights, women's, all of that stuff. And yet we have policies that are extremely conservative because of many different things. And it's boiling over. It's going to keep boiling over because these young people in the streets and these other people, they don't have a stake in the world the way older people might, who are so worried about everything burning down. There's a whole idea in the U.S. and I think in many parts of the world that are saying, burn it down. What do I care? I don't see a future. And we're paying the price for some of that now. And it's not going to stop soon. Things are shaking up. They're going to keep getting shaken up, and we could see real clashes. I don't know if it's going to be extremely violent clashes, but we're seeing these things shake out now. And I think because the majority of the people are in agreement with most of these things, it's not going to be. It's going to be very auspicious. Now, again, sometimes I say these things, and people be like, then when it gets difficult and you start seeing some clashes, people are like, you said it was going to be great. I'm not saying it's going to be great. None of this it unfolds so smoothly. But get ready for some big changes. They're going to keep coming. And they're leading toward higher consciousness socially. And in your life, it's time to put your practices into practice. This is the great Mahadeva, Shiva, Parvati. This is where the union of masculine and feminine come together in your mind. So, but you have to do that work. So, just looking at some of the comments, Shubha Rose says, mantra, be a bird on a twig. Yeah, that sounds like someone who is also an Amma devotee like me. The mantra, keep the mantra in the mind. Like my guru Amma says, you have to be like a bird on a twig. If you see a bird that's on a twig, like a dried tree branch or like a twig that's about to break, you'll see they're always fluttering their wings anytime the wind blows because they know that the branch is unsettled. So they're always flap their wings expecting to fall. And we should be like that bird on the twig. You should live your life like a bird on a twig, on a very uncertain perch, a very tenuous grasp, and a very uncertain existence. We think the ground is solid. We think our body is solid. We think everything is real and solid, and none of it is. This body isn't yours. It belongs to the 5 elements on earth. The mind has been much of it given to you by other things you've heard, even by people like me and me from everywhere. Our mind just picks up all kinds of stuff. Who are we underneath it all? Who are we beneath the body that's changing based on the environment, and the mind where we're just picking up all kinds of stuff? What's underneath all of that? What's the pure consciousness underneath it all that's not of this earth? So the mantra connects you to the true self. The mantra connects you to that highest self that's beyond this world. I'm going to put that link again for people who want to check out the free webinar that I did on Rahu and Ketu and the eclipses, so you can get a better understanding of this Rahu going through Gemini, Ketu going through Sagittarius. I recorded it last year, and you'll see these shifts that we've been through with the nakshatras and all that as well. It's free to register, but I just wanted to make this extra update if this has been helpful. if this has been helpful, go ahead and share it with others. Share it on your YouTube, Facebook, or other places that you congregate. And I see Darcy here. Thank you for naming the current uncomfortable tone on social media. Everyone is an expert, but when you try to post facts, many people are attacking others. Yeah, it's tricky. I'll give you my experience with it. I don't post any quote facts of anything unless it's cited. Like, and I'll give the person who said, I'll give the link to it usually, and what have you. And you know, it's like everybody is like, well, I look at the organizations, then I do my own research. And really, oftentimes their own research means going to the website that spins it the way they want it or whatever. No one is doing any big research here, frankly. They're not. Anyway, I don't want to get nasty or anything, but it's just, I mean, there are people that feel like it's their duty to go on. I mean, I've seen people write it. I've had to remove some people from my feed because even just seeing their nature to want to go and like it's their job to go correct everybody and literally even use the word, I have to go correct people that are posting stuff that's wrong. They're not correcting anything. They're just putting their bias out. And look, people are free to do it, but at some point it just gets to be too much. And I just apply the golden rule. The golden rule is very simple. What I have done that, again, do unto others. And people are really crossing the do unto others thing big time. They feel like it's their right, their job, their duty to go correct people, even when people are posting things that have been vetted from an organization, again, like WHO or CDC or whatever, and you already have looked at it and cross-referenced it with other studies and take your time to like write it out, and so much of it is just political correctness, to be honest with you. And again, much of the blowback or feedback is always, usually with me, winds up being something like, well, we have to be careful not to create the impression that we shouldn't wear masks, or, just always like trying to like, let's be careful not to state facts because somebody might think that it means that you're advocating not wearing masks, and that could be like, my God. It's just utter political correctness. It's bad. This is not good. But by the way, I'm just going to say this, and it's especially left wing. This is one of the biggest reasons Trump got elected. And again, I'll tell you something. Left wingers don't want to hear it. Liberals don't want to hear that they have a strong liberal bias, and that liberal bias that wants to shut people up, unless you say it in some politically correct way and tell people to be quiet because somebody might get offended or because somebody might misunderstand it. So don't say it. And I'm going to sit here and tell you not to say it. Again, this kind of political correctness is one of the things that a lot of people liked about Trump, because he just came out and said, I don't care about your political correct. He kept saying, you might not remember the 2016 election, before it turned into so much racism, which it then turned into, which is blacks and all that. Much of it, most of the time also, was political correctness, especially at first. That was his biggest thing that he would constantly hammer on, was political correctness. And it's exactly that kind of stuff that we're seeing now. Again, I didn't want to make this a big part of what I'm saying, but others notice it as well. And like, you can't say anything about even the fact that we see trends. There are no trends that contradict any of the things that I said, especially like about COVID. No trends contradicted at all. All the trends say the same thing, and they always have. From the earliest testing, it's always been about the same dynamic, the same demographic. But anyway, everyone's doing their best, and I don't like to get into those kinds of things. I don't like having to remove people or whatever either. But it's just like the golden rule. Would I have done that and gone and done that on their page, or this argument, or this kind of charged drama that they want to, no. And so people need to chill out. We're not suddenly all experts in, RNA viruses, and, because we can do Google searches and cherry pick from the websites we like and the TV shows we like, the TV commentators we trust because of our bias. That doesn't mean we're doing independent research. Good Lord. It's like, come on, people. Anyway, I'm not going to go off on that too much, but since it was mentioned, it's just like, yeah. All right. So Sometimes by the time we get near an hour, I start ranting a little bit. So maybe I'll end it here. So anyway, Darcy, thank you for saying that. And McVeigh says, so true. Absolutely. So look, I really want us all, my whole thing through this whole thing has been, and even what I post is like, everybody, we're in it together. We all want the same thing. We all want the same world. We don't want to get coronavirus. We don't want to be microchipped. We don't want to be vaxxed. We don't want to be any of this stuff. And again, I'll just say this last thing. One of the things that the people that have this left-wing bias and who want to keep promoting something that looks kind of hysterical is they're actually playing into many of the things they're also playing against. Because the more they keep saying this stuff, the more they're preparing us all to be hysterical, like, protect me from it. It's so horrible. We all need vaccinations. We all need this. Like, chill out. Stop making it out like it's Frankenstein's monster that we've never seen. It's a bad virus. Yeah, we need to do what we're doing. But let's not lose our mind. We have data now. And the more we lose our mind, the more we are actually programming each other to accept some crazy vax solution that's not even there. So chill out, everybody. We're going to get through it, and we're going to and it's not going to be easy. It's a novel coronavirus with no treatment yet, but there's a lot of progress. It's accelerating a lot. And so I think we're going to get treatments, and we're still on the early part of getting through it to the end. But in the meantime, we can take some data. Some of it is really good news, and still keep doing what we're doing and be kind to each other. Stop acting like if people don't agree with us or they do different things, that they're the spawn of hell. That doesn't help. Okay, folks. So we'll leave it there. And again, someone said, sadly, the fearful ones are easy to manipulate. That's exactly what I mean. Even trying to make it seem like, look, yes, this is difficult, but the data seems to think, or the data is showing there are things that we could look at and use correctly. And then it's like, oh, yeah. So we gotta be chill with that. All right, folks. So I hope you have a good day. You could share this with others, and thanks for watching. And be chill, be calm, be kind. I will too. Do my best.